Breakfast Club, a 1985 Gen X favorite about the kids at Shermer High in detention. It's kind of been a classic to those folks, but let's see how it held up. Haven't watched it in a minute. Gonna give you my thoughts right now. All right, The Breakfast Club. Yeah, this is one of the movies on Mrs. Pop's short list of things that she wanted to watch. And I thought to myself, I know I haven't done a video, which means I probably haven't watched it in the last couple of years. Let's give it a go. And let me really kind of think about how I really like it in today's world and today's standards. And I have to be honest, I was never a massive fan of Breakfast Club. I enjoyed it for what it was. I do think the characters speak to the time, and many of the cliches and many of the things that are in the film don't necessarily age well. So we'll kind of go through those and talk about it a little bit.
Holy crap, it's the Breakfast Club!
Ah, the Breakfast Club soundtrack. Man, I can't wait till I'm old enough to feel ways about stuff.
But basically, there's five kids thrown in detention. They come from different cliques, different walks of life. And the story is about them getting to know one another and therefore becoming more tolerant and friendly to one another. At the end of the movie, though, there is kind of a very sort of like triggering moment about like, I'm actually not going to say hey to you on Monday. I'm not actually going to like you. Oh, and it's Claire, the princess, and Andy, the athlete, are like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, I'm not. And the nerd guy, the geek guy, is like, oh no, I would never treat you that way. I'm like, dude, you're at the bottom of the pole. And I always grew up finding myself, obviously, I was a nerd first, right? But I played sports. I had some athlete friends. I was pretty close. Did a lot of sports, things like that. Lived in a pretty impoverished area. We were pretty poor, so had a lot of criminal friends. Had a lot of the folks that are like the burnouts and those kind of guys. And got to be honest, when you're kind of like check a lot of those boxes, you attract kind of the quirky, weird girl. So other than like being in with the princess and really kind of the upper tier jocks and things like that, I can relate to the film a lot in a lot of different ways. And I think that's another reason why it resonates with so many people because John Hughes did hit the notes of its era and its time through all these different characters. All right, the star of the show, really, to be honest, is Paul Gleason. Richard Vernon, the principal, he's grumpy, he's mean, he's inconsistent. He's fantastic in this. Obviously, I love him in Die Hard. It's like he's got some of these great moments about we got to get more feds. But here he's really great. Every scene he's in is sort of like a very memorable, like cliche moment. I just really loved everything he did with his role, with his character. Those were some of the best scenes in the movie for me. So in the trailer, we do get a little look at each one of the kids. Here's Princess Claire, played by Molly Ringwald. She was pretty believable as the princess character. I think that there's sort of like an upper echelon snobbiness that they were going for. I think that works pretty well. Her lunch and things like that were even more over the top than real life in the 80s. Like I don't think I really know any of like the uber richie kids or the richies really like bringing that level of food, chopsticks and all. That would have been mocked. I don't care if you're the rich kid or not. Even the other rich kids make fun of that. Andy was fine. I think Emilio Estevez is a little sort of underwhelming as some sort of wrestling stud, but it plays well for what they're going for. The good looking athlete kid. Most of the jocks and stuff that were in my school were either much bigger than him or much cockier than him, things like that. So I don't think that I totally felt like it represented a lot of the kids, but some of the kids. All right. So for many people, the star of the show is Bender, right? The bad boy, the criminal, the burnout. Judd Nelson, first off, looks like he's like 30 in this film. Like he just looks way too old to be that kid in this film. But you know what? It is what it is. It's pretty good in the sense of he's portraying like the criminal kid who has a way worse background. You know, he's getting abused at home. He has a cigarette lighter mark, cigarette burn on his arm. The other kids are like, nah, it's not real. That part of it, I think, is some of the best elements of the story because it does shock other kids into knowing how bad other people have it, other kids have it, and that, yeah, this kid's got it really bad. What do you expect? How do you think he's going to overcome it? Now, there are moments that are just like, so when he's in it with Vernon back and forth about getting detention weekend after weekend after weekend, That stuff's ridiculous. And again, Vernon is like a very hyperbolic, get away with murder type principal. Even back then, I have to be honest. First off, the principals would never be in detention. They would have these low level teachers doing it. It would be like the junior year history teacher or the one of the gym teachers. They would be in charge of detention, and then it would be you wouldn't be allowed to just throw kids in detention for no reason, things like that. That would have come to a head. Now,
Oh, Bender, what are you doing? Don't talk back to the principal. He's just going to make you come back next Saturday. Just keep your mouth. Oh, you did it. You talked back to him. Oh, now you're going to get more detention. Oh, you did it again.
again, everyone, you guys in comments, you would tell me your stories. I don't remember anything being quite like that extreme. Usually, people like this kid like this, he usually was. He'd vandalize his school. He'd get caught with marijuana or drugs, other drugs, or drinking, and those kinds of things would happen all the time. Ali Sheedy is like the weird kid, the schizo kid. And at the end of the day, at the end of the movie, it's sort of like, oh, she's just there because she had nothing else to do. It's just silly. I love when she's shaking the dandruff onto her drawing to make it snow. Like that is the quirky kids, but these were quirky kids that would know some of the other kids. Like it was pretty rare that she would be this obscure to the other kids. Like the nerdy kid and her would probably have a class together. The princess and her would probably have a class together. At some point or another, the roads had crossed. She would know a lot about them, and maybe they don't know quite as much about her. That part I think was captured well in the film, and they do a good job with that with some of the interactions. And then, of course, Anthony Michael Hall, the uber nerd, the uber geek of the 80s, right? From 16 Candles and beyond, Weird Science, things like that. His story of how he ends up in detention by not getting the grade he wants, but it's sort of like an extreme thing. Like pretty rare that kids were putting that much pressure on themselves, but I'm not going to say it's not unheard of. Like it seems like it's a thing that you think exists more, or you have like one story out of hundreds that exists. So I don't want to discount this happening. I don't think I ever know of anyone who went that extreme. I know people who are emotionally devastated, had tests, things like that. And there's a lot of embarrassment, but think that's also a lot of character building and things like that. So shame on the families for not kind of being better engaged with some of this stuff. But that's kind of the point of the movie is that they don't really have it. What is it? The line is if you're not having a crappy relationship with your parents, you're lying. That was a pretty good line. That was a pretty good line. I'd kind of forgotten about them getting high together at school and acting weird, and it kind of leads right into like the dancing montage, which was probably my least favorite part of the entire movie. The absurdity of the dancing montage. It totally really bad 80s type stuff happening during that sequence. But even the cheesy over the top overacting of kids getting high type thing was a little it was a lot more of a letdown than I thought I remembered it to be. I will say the makeover, the Ali Sheedy makeover, it actually was one of the things I didn't really remember a lot about, and it surprised me because it made me feel happy and joyful for her as a character. I don't find that as something that would be sustainable. I know people who did like the makeover thing and they were radically changed at some point during their high school career or life, even into college. And sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. I know of one person in particular where they went home after the summer on one year and came back a completely different person because they had befriended someone else who had obviously inspired them, motivated, encouraged, and supported them to become more of their true self. And I'm just going to take it at face value. That's who they wanted to become. I don't think the movie does a good job of answering the questions that would be needed for her to be able to sustain this type of makeover to be appealing to Andy or anyone else. And worse than that is the princess criminal relationship, right? Claire and Bender having a relationship. It's fine for a movie cliche. Oh, yes, bad boy. You're going to bring the bad boy home. You're going to thumb your nose at mommy and daddy. Well, mommy and daddy are going to put you on restriction. Mommy and daddy are going to cut you off financially. Mommy and daddy will take your credit card whenever you get credit. I mean, that's so. And what is he going to do? It's like not stop smoking pot, not breaking the law, not what. So it's fine for a movie and a movie trope. And maybe I've just become cynical in my old age. It's like a silly movie cliche and thing that's been done. And it's just silly. It's just crazy. Yeah, this is one of the dance moments. I just hated all of this part of it. I just didn't care for any of that. Them running around the school, though, I thought was kind of fun, but again, very unbelievable, very silly. This is actually one of my favorite parts for a stupid reason because I had this. So back then you were bored, you would make these paper triangles and you would tape them and make a little paper football and play this football game back and forth. And you've seen it in other movies and other pop culture things like that, but this was actually kind of a thing we did a lot in school. I'm not sure I understand how it even got started, but we did. And I was happy to see it sort of like be brought to my mind's eye with this scene. So all in all, it was a pleasant rewatch. Movie doesn't hold up as well for me as I'd hoped it had. I couldn't stand the fact that they dump on the geek and nerdy kid. They kind of like manipulate him into writing the one letter so they get out of work. And it's all for so it's full of like the cliches and things like that of like 80 tropes and Hughes films and that kind of thing. It's one of these things where I think nostalgically I remember it being better than it is. It didn't age particularly as great as I thought it would because I don't feel like a lot of the characters are uh, bigger than the stereotype of their time. They're not bigger archetypes. And that, yes, the criminal, the princess, all that. Yeah, we probably still have a lot of that today and whatever. But I think that because of phones and where people can live now, it's even a more isolated bubble. And the fact that it could be disrupted after one day being thrust together, yeah, it's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So, anyway, overall, I would still rank this as sort of like a Midland film for me. A little better than average, probably like a 3 out of 5, maybe a 3.5 for people that have a little bit more of a nostalgic feel for it. But it's not something that I'm going to put in like top tier. And I don't think it ever gets comedic enough for me to like overtake other Hughes films that I find just much funnier. Coming of age films like Ferris Bueller. It's just way more. It's just way more entertaining to sit through. I'd rather just sit through that one instead of rewatch this one. So I'd love to hear from you guys. I know many of you probably love this film, and I totally get it. Many of you probably love more moments that I didn't bring up, things like that. Love to hear from you about that. Obviously, Carl, and talk about the janitor, Carl. He's crazy, man. He has some great moments too. Didn't talk about him. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. I am Pops.
I got for Christmas? It was a banner freaking year at the Tiger House. I got a carton of cigarettes. Old man grabbed me, said, "Hey, smoke up, Tony. They're great."
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Does Barry Manilow know you raid his wardrobe?
You'll get the answer to that question next Saturday. Don't mess with the bull, young man. You'll get the horns.